This is a continuing class of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, part 2, chapter 9, answers citing the Lord's version. I might explain that there are two primary scriptures which the Vaishnavas they study intensively, and that is the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken by Lord Krishna himself, and then the Srimad Bhagavatam, which was written by Srila Vyasadeva, and compiled all of Krishna's pastimes in 18,000 verses. So these two books are strictly about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes, and the Bhagavad Gita is, of course, spoken by Krishna himself. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is the pastimes of Krishna spoken by, let's say, narration between King Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit, and Sukadeva Goswami. And Maharaj Parikshit was an extraordinary devotee of Krishna, and so he was very, very completely powerful king with all opulences. There was nothing that anyone wouldn't do for him. He was revered in every way, but he was cursed to die in 7 days, and he could have avoided that, but he didn't want to avoid that because he wanted to teach everyone in the future what to do when the point of death is coming, when you know you're going to die. And of course, we all know we're going to die, we just don't know when. He had 7 days. And so he chose to listen to the narration of Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami in a forest called Naimisharanya. And it was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of sages who all came there to see the king off on his journey into the spiritual world by hearing the narrations of Krishna and Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the background. And we are on chapter 9, answers, citing the Lord's version. Maharaj Parikshit had just asked numerous questions. Some of the questions are very detailed questions about this material world and how it operates. Things that we may want to know, things we may not need to know. But this book is for everyone in all levels of curiosity. So if you want to know something about pretty much anything, it's in this book. So Maharaj Parikshit, now Sukadeva Goswami is answering the questions, or beginning to answer the questions. First, he's glorifying the king's questions. These are wonderful questions that you've asked me, and I'm going to answer them to my best ability. So, the text number 4 was where we left off yesterday. It had one more paragraph. So we'll continue with that. I'll read back just a couple so we kind of tie it together a little bit. But first let me offer my obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, who is the supreme, all-pervading personality of Godhead. I meditate upon that transcendent reality who is the primeval cause of all causes, from whom all manifested universes arise, in whom they dwell, and by whom they are destroyed. I meditate upon that eternally effulgent Lord, who is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and is yet beyond them. It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma, the first created being, and through him this world, like a mirage, appears real, even to great sages and demigods. And because of him, the material universes created by the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I meditate, therefore, upon him, the absolute truth, who is eternally existent in his transcendental abode, and who is forever free of illusion. Lord Shri Krishna, Ki Jai. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are pure at heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Sri Vyasadeva is sufficient in itself for God realization. As soon as one attentively and submissively hears this message of Srimad Bhagavatam, he becomes attached to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. So, we'll go back to text number 2. The illusioned living entity appears in many forms, which are offered by the external energy of the Lord. And the encaged living entity, while enjoying in the modes of material nature, misconceives, thinking in terms of I and mine. I and mine. As soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self. Pure self. And text number 4, this is today. Atma tattva vishuddhyat artam yaraha bhagavan ritam brahmane darshayam rupam avyalika vrattad dritaha. Vitad adrita, worshipped. And so this is Sukadeva Goswami still speaking. He says, O king, the personality of Godhead being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga, presented his eternal and transcendental form before Lord Brahma. And that is the objective goal for glorifying the conditioned soul. So if you want to become qualified to become a glorified conditioned soul, you have to pray like Lord Brahma in non-deceptive prayers. In other words, straight up. So, I'll read a couple of sentences before the last paragraph. So that is the distinction between the form of the Lord and that of the conditioned soul. Okay. Therefore, the question by Maharaj Parikshit about the form of the Lord is answered. The form of the Lord is Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. But the material form of the living entity, that's us, is neither eternal, nor full of knowledge, nor very blissful. That is the distinction between the form of the Lord and that of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, however, can regain his form of eternal knowledge and bliss simply by seeing the Lord by means of Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga simply means love. It's the yoga of love, and yet the connecting to Krishna through the feelings, emotions of love. And by offering yourself in that way, Krishna becomes obliged. When you come to that pure state of desire to see Krishna and you offering your loving emotions, Krishna becomes obliged to reveal himself to you in the heart. So that's the constitutional glory of the conditioned soul. When Krishna comes and says, you are no longer a conditioned soul. You are now regaining your original spiritual form, which is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, happiness, continuous happiness. There is no sadness there. Material world is nothing but sadness. Everything we everything we start up here becomes complicated and many times ends in sadness and disappointment. This is just the way it's made. You can't change that. No matter how much you'd like to change it. And why do you want to change it? Because you know that there is something beyond this. So there is a natural urge to hope that everything will become better here, but it never becomes really better. It just stays the same. And so everything here is designed to create a strong desire for liberation in the conditioned soul, realizing that this place is just what it is, but I'm not. I'm not part of this place. I'm actually different. I'm the eternal soul inside this body, and I don't want to stay here any longer. That's it. So that is. So we have the methods and the science of Bhakti Yoga to be able to free ourselves from the material energy, and that's what this book is all about. Getting back our spiritual form and rendering loving service in a transcendental world which is beyond birth and death. The summary is that due to ignorance, the conditioned soul is encaged in the temporary varieties of material forms. And the varieties are quite extensive, as you see. There's insect species, there's animal species, bird species, aquatic species, a lot of human species, primate species, all different kinds of species, with so many different kinds of bodies, vegetable life, plant life, and bacteria. You can actually be, in some very, very unfortunate situation, becoming a bacteria. Or even worse, maybe a virus. Then you can affect someone's computer. Oh, that's a lousy joke. Anyway. But that's the wide variety of options in the material world, a lot of different kinds of bodies. In summary, the summary is that due to ignorance of the conditioned soul, he is encaged in the temporary varieties of material forms. But the Supreme Lord has no such temporary form like the conditioned souls. So conditioned souls, you have to understand, first of all, you are an atomic particle of consciousness, and you will always be an atomic particle of consciousness, whether in the conditioned state or in the liberated state. That spiritual form is still powered by that spark of pure consciousness. The material body that we have now is powered by that spiritual that spiritual spark of consciousness. You'll always be that person, just in the either conditioned state, the impure state, or in the pure state. Krishna is always full, possessed of the eternal form of knowledge and bliss, and that is the difference between the Lord and the living entity. One can understand this difference by the process of Bhakti Yoga. Brahma was then told by the Lord the gist of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 original verses. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam is not a creation of the mental speculators. That's why it says in the first verse, the Lord Krishna gave this knowledge to Lord Brahma, the first created being, in 4 original verses. The Srimad Bhagavatam is not a creation of mental speculators. The sound of Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental, and the resonance of Srimad Bhagavatam is as good as that of the Vedas. Thus, the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam is the science of both the Lord and the living entity. Regular reading or hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is also performance of Bhakti Yoga. That's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, those who worship me, worship by reading this book and studying this Bhagavad Gita, worship me with their intelligence. They worship me with their intelligence. So that's the form of Bhakti Yoga. It's just reading and using your intelligence to understand Krishna is also Bhakti Yoga. Regular reading or hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is also a performance of Bhakti Yoga, and one can attain the highest perfection simply by the association of Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit attained perfection through the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the transcendental subjects that were being discussed between these two very wonderful entities, Lord Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, they created a power, a special power between them, where they began to channel, literally channel from heart to heart, questions and answers, and the answers are all centered on Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. And so that channel, that power became so powerful that it became the literature which can actually free any living entity just by hearing and chanting and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. That special persons, when the hearer and the speaker are qualified, a special energy becomes created, because they're absorbed. The speaker is absorbed in speaking. He's feeling the rise of this transcendental knowledge coming up from his heart. He's speaking it into the ears of the qualified listener, and that listener, that same power that's coming from the heart of the speaker, is going into the ears of the listener and then going into the heart of the listener. And a special power is created through the process of sound. Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll stop here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.